Okay, moving on to the next segment of today's show, I wanted to talk a little bit of NFL and one of the teams that found themselves in the news earlier this week, and that was that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers decided to sign running back Leonard Fournette and bring him in for the upcoming season. And if you remember, on Monday's show, we did a whole recap of Leonard Fournette and Yannick Ngakoue both moving on from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Ngakoue was traded, indeed, to the Minnesota Vikings. It did take Leonard Fournette a little bit of time, but he ends up finding a job with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And on Wednesday's show, we spoke a little bit about the New Orleans Saints and why I thought that this year more than ever has to be the year for them if Drew Brees wants to win another Super Bowl championship before he retires. So today, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the news with them signing Fournette and the fact that a couple people have asked me for my opinion about the Buccaneers signing of Leonard Fournette and what that makes me think for their abilities and their potential for the upcoming season, I decided to dedicate a whole segment to these Buccaneers. After you guys remember, on Wednesday, I did a whole segment on the New Orleans Saints. And here's the first thing I'll say. If you didn't listen to Monday's segment I did on the Jacksonville Jaguars, one of the main points I brought up about Leonard Fournette and his overall ability to play was this. Leonard Fournette coming out of college, I thought was going to be the real deal. I thought he was going to be on the same trajectory that Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley, and Tristan McCaffrey are on now. If you saw this guy play at LSU, you guys probably would agree with me. So I thought that there was no doubt about it that he would be a top 5 talent coming out of college. And I really did think when he was drafted for the near future, he was going to be one of the better running backs in the National Football League for years to come. But at the same time, he goes to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who take him with the number, I believe, 4 overall pick in that 2017 NFL draft. And the 2017 NFL draft is a draft that on this podcast, we have specifically spoke a lot about it because that was the draft when the Chicago Bears famously took with the number 2 pick overall, Mitchell Trubisky, over Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, and everyone rips on the Chicago Bears for that, and rightfully so. But what no one really does in particular is rip on the Jacksonville Jaguars for their decision to take Leonard Fournette over both of those two extremely talented quarterbacks. And Leonard Fournette was very good in Jacksonville his rookie year. He was a big part of that Jacksonville Jaguar team that ended up going to the AFC Championship game and was 1 win away from going to the Super Bowl. And here's the thing. Really, ever since that year, he hasn't been at all consistent. He hasn't really been able to put together that as good of a stretch as he did his rookie year. And one thing about Leonard Fournette is, and this has been dating back to the fact about this when he was drafted, is that atmosphere and situation really does matter. Leonard Fournette got suspended last year when the Jacksonville Jaguars season was basically over. He was basically also the last guy standing on the Jacksonville Jaguars, along with Yannick Ngakoue. Both of them obviously had beef with the management. So both of those guys were the last 2 guys standing, and Fournette wasn't really happy at all about that. And he ends up getting his wish because no one else around the league wants him, and he ends up going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So a lot of people have asked me, Zach, what effect do you think this is going to have on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Leonard Fournette hasn't really been that consistent since his rookie season in Jacksonville. You just said that. How do you think he's going to do in Tampa Bay? And I think he's going to be okay in Tampa Bay. One thing that I think Leonard Fournette is really going to benefit from in Tampa Bay is that it looks like, I think, is going to have an opportunity right away. It's not so often that you get cut from a bad football team like the Jacksonville Jaguars, and all of a sudden, wherever you sign, odds are you're going to be the starter right away. And even though he's going to have some competition in that Tampa Bay Buccaneer running back room with Ronald Jones, the third-year back out of USC that did show some potential flashes last year, along with Keyshawn Vaughn, the rookie running back that they drafted from Vanderbilt. So there are other guys in that Tampa Bay Buccaneer running back room. But right now, Leonard Fournette does look like the most proven commodity, and he looks like he, just overall when you look at his resume, has earned the right to get the first crack at it and be the every down back. And you guys know, you've seen Tom Brady throughout his career, that as big of a threat as he is passing the football, that creates some of the opportunities for the running game. And last year, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers didn't really have a consistent opportunity at getting a running game going. And if you've been listening to this podcast, since Tom Brady has signed with the Buccaneers, what have I been saying about what Bruce Arians needs to do to set this offense up, and why I think the Buccaneers offense is going to benefit more this year than last year, even though last year they had a quarterback that led the National Football League in passing touchdowns. It's this, is that last year, Jameis Winston threw so many interceptions that he put the Buccaneers defense in a bad position in game after game after game. And Tom Brady is going to do exactly the opposite of that. So, in order for Tom Brady to do that, what does he need? That is a good running game and a good offensive line. Last year in New England, he didn't have either of those. One thing that I like about Tampa Bay and their GM Jason Light and the way he built the team is that he has really prioritized the offensive line. It was a decent group last year, especially on the inside, led by center Ryan Jensen and guard Ali Marpet. But this year, he decides to bring in the first round, Tristan Wirfs, the big offensive tackle from the University of Iowa. I think he's going to be one of the better tackles in this draft. I think the Buccaneers made a really nice pick and got a bargain in taking him. And I think he could be a really good player for this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. So now you bring Leonard Fournette into the equation, a guy that I think is better, than any running back on the New England Patriots team last year. And when you look at the receivers that Tom Brady has as weapons in Mike Evans, in Chris Godwin, you have Gronk, you have Cameron Brate, and you have Bruce Arians, a guy that has won before as an NFL head coach, even though I don't think Leonard Fournette is the end-all, be-all, and I don't think he's some kind of difference maker. I expected the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to be very successful this season before they got Leonard Fournette. So, them getting him could only help them even more. And the reason why I think this helps him is because even though, once again, I don't think Leonard Fournette is really the end-all, be-all at this stage in his career, he is better than anything Tampa Bay currently has in their running back room. And Tom Brady, at this point in his career, probably does need an effective running game. And would I be shocked if Leonard Fournette, all of a sudden, when we turn around and look at his numbers, and we see him as like a top 12 running back in the NFL? I wouldn't be shocked at all. And I really like the way this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team currently stands right now. When we look at the NFC, each of the last couple of years, there has been that one breakout team that in the offseason prior, not a lot of people necessarily expected that team to break out. Last year, when we looked at it, it was the San Francisco 49ers. The year before that, it was the Chicago Bears. And I understand, and the year before that, it was the Los Angeles Rams. I understand people expect the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to be good, but this team hasn't played together at all. We know that with this offseason, it's going to be very hard with no preseason games to develop the chemistry that you normally would. And I totally understand it's easier when you have a very experienced head coach like Bruce Arians and a very experienced quarterback like Tom Brady. But when you combine the pressure that Tom Brady has going into this season, if you were to ask anyone what is the biggest non-COVID storyline in the NFL this season, everyone is going to say the same thing, and that is Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. How is one going to do without the other? And I think both of them are going to be pretty successful. If you guys have listened to this show as well, you guys also know how I think about the New England Patriots and the way and the belief I have in Bill Belichick. But I have the same kind of belief in Tom Brady, especially when he's surrounded around a much better team than he was last year with the New England Patriots. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a franchise that haven't won and haven't made the playoffs in a really long time. And they were a team that took Jameis Winston with the number 1 overall pick, and they were expecting big things from him. The fact that he couldn't even lead them to one postseason appearance is going to go down as a pretty big disappointment. But even though he showed potential, I think Tampa Bay ended up making the right decision moving on from him this offseason. And now they look at it with the Hall of Fame quarterback, the GOAT, Tom Brady, under center with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, 2 of the best receivers in the league, and a defense that should be improved. Now you throw Leonard Fournette into the mix. That it should really only help. A couple people also have asked me my opinions on the other 2 teams in the NFC South, the Panthers and the Falcons, and instead of answering those questions, about those 2 teams right now, I'm going to have to wait until either Monday or Tuesday when I drop the full NFL preview podcast with that guest. We're going to be going all around the league, going over all 16 teams, giving you guys my prediction for each of the 7 playoff teams. That's going to be a lot of fun. It will be a very exciting episode of the Zach Kroll Sports Podcast. And to give you guys a quick spoiler, I do think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be at the top of my list. I'm excited to watch this team play, and in an NFC that is very wide open. The winner of the NFC South and the winner of the NFC West is going to be feeling very confident about their ability to win the league, because 2 of those 2 divisions are probably the 2 best divisions in the NFC. I know you can make an argument that the NFC West could be the most competitive division, but I don't think the Packers, Vikings, Bears, and Lions are anywhere close, to be honest, to the same level where the Buccaneers, Saints, Seahawks, and 49ers are. I think right now, if you ask anyone, who do you think is going to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl for this upcoming season, you're going to be surprised if you hear an answer that's not named San Francisco, New Orleans, Tampa, or Seattle. And if you do have a team coming out of the NFC that's not one of those 4, please let me know, because I would really want to know, what exactly your thought process is behind it, and maybe I'll be opened up to the idea. But NFL season is starting in less than a week. You guys know that recently on this podcast, we have been talking a lot of NBA, and a big reason for that is not only because the NBA is in the middle of the playoffs right now, but also NFL season is starting up next week, and we're going to be talking a lot of football on this show.